Hi everyone, and welcome to the second season of the UX Time podcast. My name is Svetoslav Nitka, and I'm a co-host and design lead at Magic Flux, which is a part of the Tech Magic company. My co-host is Alexander Pichtovnikov, a delivery director and health tech expert at Tech Magic. Today our guest is David Brandau, head of product design at Doctolib. Don't forget to subscribe to our YouTube channel and podcast platforms so you never miss an episode. Additionally, Tech Magic and Magic Flux are organizing the free UX Time Conference 2026, and registration is now open. If you're interested in learning from speakers at some of the largest companies in the world and receiving a certificate of attendance, check out the link in the description. Hi Alex, it's great to have you as a co-host, and hi David, welcome to the podcast. Let's start with your design story. How did you get started? What has your journey been like? And where are you now?
Cool. Thanks, guys, for the invitation. I don't want to maybe go too far back, but if I think about where my design story starts, it's probably Christmas somewhere in the 90s, because I got a Commodore 64 as a Christmas present, and my parents got this for me. It was a used product they bought with a lot of games and also some magazines, and it was really cool because of course, it came with a lot of games, which was amazing, but it also had the possibility to program something. So I actually read through the magazines, and there was a programming language called BASIC, and I started to, type for hours. There were pages full of code, and I typed all the codes into my computer, and only to have a balloon fly over the screen for 2 seconds. And then I thought, okay, that is pretty cool. I like the design part of it, but probably I don't want to go into programming. It just takes too long. And it also came with the possibility to try some things like there was actually an operation system on the Commodore as well called GEOS. It looked kind of like macOS, even though I had never seen a Mac until then. Only saw that way later. And it also came with graphic design tools, a bit like MS Paint back then. And so I also used it to design some stuff. There was actually a printer which came with the computer, which only could print with needles, only in black and white. I used this to make some CD covers. And that was, so I think my first connection with at least digital design. And so what I did afterwards was that a friend of mine, so when I had my first PC, a friend of mine brought me, I think the first, or I don't know which version of it, it was some version of Photoshop cracked on CD. And so I started to, also use this to play around. And he also brought me Self HTML, which was a website back then, but it also came with lots of HTML tutorials, so to say. So I used this to build my own website. And it was also a time when, we had a modem, which took really long to connect to the internet. So you could also not upload too much at a time. So my website was quite simple, but I still tried to create lots of cool GIF animations and all of that stuff. So there was the trend back then, you try to make everything blink as much as possible. And then I don't know, I really started to like that. And I was not really sure if this is something that I could do as a job at some point. So after school, there was maybe the end of my school career. And I actually wanted to study communication design. That was something I'm from Hanover originally, and that was the design studies that you could do in Hanover. But back then, in order to get in there, you had to draw, or you had to send in a portfolio, and you had to draw by hand or also hand in photography. And I just felt like I was not good enough, so I checked. Also, I did some drawing classes, and I felt like compared to the others, my drawing skills were not good enough, or that was what I thought, So I never even tried to hand in my application, and instead kept on designing some stuff with Photoshop. And I played in a punk rock band. I think you saw before in my background there are some guitars on my wall, and I just used that to start making websites and CD covers, posters for local local bands in Hanover, and realized this is something I just like doing, so I enjoyed doing this a lot. And only way later, at some point, through some connections, someone contacted me who was a designer in Berlin in an agency called Icon Mobile, and she was actually looking for an intern. And I think I had this connection through my mom and I don't know, some people we knew. And then because I didn't have a portfolio, so I thought, I just sent her all this stuff that I was doing, all the posters and CDs covers and websites that I made. And apparently she liked it, so invited me to Berlin for a 2-week internship. And afterwards, they asked me if I wanted to, stay a bit longer for half a year. And after that, they actually asked me if I wanted to do a media design apprenticeship, which I did. And that was actually quite cool because, half of the time you went to school, half of the time you worked in the same company. And it was quite detailed what you learned there. So also compared to, I studied later, but compared to my studies, what was nice was that people really taught you some things and also asked you to, go quite deep. So we learned a lot about typography and about color theory, and we even had Photoshop classes. In one class, we got a picture of multiple glasses which were overlapping, and we had to cut out the background so that everything looked transparent. We had to put something behind it, so quite intense photoshopping, which you don't need anymore at all today, but back then it was somehow cool. And yeah, I don't know, and that's, I guess, how I got into it.
And at this point, you work at Doctolib. For our listeners who might not be familiar, could you share a bit more about Doctolib and what the company does?
Of course. So Doctolib is a French company, but we actually see it also as a European company. We're active in France, in Germany, and in Italy. We also have an office in Amsterdam, in the Netherlands. And there's one product, Doctolib Silo, actually will be called Doctolib Connect very soon. The renaming will happen next week. It's kind of like a communication platform, which is also available to people who are not Doctolib customers. So it's a free app which people can download who are medical professionals, so they can communicate using this app. And those people are also outside of all the countries where Doctolib is active. Even in Brazil, there are some people. On what we generally focus on, I said it already a little bit, we're a medical company, but we focus on a B2C and a B2B side. The B2C side is of the goal is to help humans lead a healthier life with a core product, which is basically the possibility to give people the option to book appointments with doctors, but also with the possibility to, for example, send them messages to avoid that people go to the medical practices, especially when they're sick, so they should be able to do more things from home. Also with the option to do video calls with them and to set up a health profile, which they can use in order to also see what kind of prevention options they have based on a certain profile, on the medical profile. And on the other side, the B2B side, we improve the lives of healthcare professionals. And one large aspect of this is that we focus on removing administrative work from the lives of healthcare professionals. So everything that takes really long and is complicated should not be part of the job of these people, and we would like them to focus way more time on the patients to improve the patient experience, so to say. And yeah, I think that's mainly it. And my team, by the way, is only focusing on the B2B side. And a lot of what we do has to do with communication in some way. So like I said before, this communication app, for example, but we also have a product which is, for example, a phone assistant where people can call at a medical practice. If they don't reach anyone, they reach this phone assistant, which is AI powered, so it can actually already perform some actions based on what the patients tell them. And we also have a system where they can send messages from our perspective or from my team's perspective. It's the other side, the B2B side. Doctors and medical secretaries use this to handle tasks which come in from patients, and in the best case, as automated as possible.
I know you transitioned from a product design role to head of product design. Could you share some insights on that transition and your impressions?
Yeah, so at Doctolib, I started actually as a senior product designer. I was the next to one other designer, the first designer in the office in Berlin. I started in 2020. So the COVID year, it was also a bit of a weird experience starting in this company because everything was remote, and I didn't see my French team in a really long time. And in the beginning, I had to manage, I think, 8 to 9 different feature teams in Berlin because they first were also not used to working with designers. So I actually also had to set up a process with all the PMs to help them understand what designers can do and how we can help them, and that we're not there to make something look nicer necessarily only. Because in the beginning, I sometimes also got briefings like, we need a page, and there should be a button. The button says blah blah blah, and if you click on it, you go to another page, and then this and this happens. And then I had to ask them, okay, if you know all of that, what do you want me to do? And so I think by now we have really good connection with everyone in the Berlin team, also with the Amsterdam team. So that's something I told you in the outside of this podcast. I will actually move to Amsterdam next year, where I also have a team. And so during the time, so after I joined as a senior product designer, I actually grew into a design manager role because I started hiring more people for the team in Berlin. The team grew really quickly. I think when I joined, we were something like maybe 12 people in the whole design team in Germany and in France, and now we're over 60. So half of them are product designers. We also have user researchers, content designers, design ops, brand designers. And then during that time, so in the first 2 years or 2 or 3 years after I joined, the team grew really quickly. And then I also, for a time, managed half of the product design team, which were, I think around 15 people maybe, together with my counterpart in France, who managed the other half. And I felt like my job was transitioning away from doing hands-on design more and more to stakeholder management, crisis management, all of these things got more political. Which was not always something that I enjoyed so much, I have to say, because I also, I chose to become a designer because I like doing design. And at some point, our company also wanted to create flatter hierarchies. And that actually was a really good decision, I think, because I had another design manager in my team. So I also managed a manager who had other people again, and we wanted to make sure that we don't have so many levels down. So my boss is actually the VP of design. His boss is the CEO. And in my team, there are now 8 people, I believe, and changes sometimes. 8 people right now, and we have multiple teams like that in the company, which are more cross-functional. So I have product designers, but also user researcher and content designer in my team. And because of that, because it's still not a super small team, but I feel like I still have the possibility to do a little bit of hands-on work on the side, and at least also for other projects which the people in my team do. I feel like I have the capacity to go in and do some pair design sessions with them and have a better understanding of what is going on.
You have more than 17 years of experience, which is quite impressive. And over the last 5 years, you worked in the health tech domain. So it would be interesting to hear about the specific design challenges that this domain presents.
First of all, I think it's a quite complex field, and there's a good and bad thing about this. So first of all, what is great about healthcare is that you are really forced to overcome your biases. So in every other industry where I worked before, I always felt like I could be the user myself. And that meant that I really often brought in my own ideas into the process, and or not even only my ideas, but my perception how things should be. And I felt like maybe we don't need to talk to so many people in the research. I already know how it should be because of my own idea about this. And in healthcare, first of all, it's way more complex than anything I have done before. Sometimes you need to dive through extremely complicated certificates that you need to receive in order to, for example, bring a financial medical products on the market in Germany. There are several certificates that you need to go through. And then the content itself is more complicated, but then also the the scenarios in which people are that we work for, especially the medical secretaries and doctors, physiotherapists, and so on. That's nothing that I can compare with my job. It's often stressful. You help people. You have to do with people who might be hurt or in a really bad state of mind. And I feel like that's very difficult. So it's not always easy. But to go back to what I said before, it can be a good thing because I basically completely need to rely on the feedback that people give me, and sometimes that can actually be easier, I feel, because you can really rely on your design experience only, and you don't need to think about that. You need to figure out how a certain flow needs to work if it really fits to what the people tell you, basically. So that's maybe one aspect, and then one other thing, one other challenge is that you deal with a lot of different, very different types of people, of course. So like I said before, very different roles, but also different ages, different type of tech savviness. Sometimes you work with very young people who just are done or finalized their studies. You almost don't need to explain anything. You could come up with a design which is way more modern, and you can probably hide a lot of things. But then in some cases, you deal with people who are in the job for a really long time, who are actually used to having more complex interfaces, and maybe something that is also a bit more or less intuitive, but more what's the right word? Explanatory, maybe. So they're actually used to having a lot more actions on the screen. All that while dealing with these messy environments. So if you think about a medical secretary sitting behind the front desk, the telephone rings all the time. There are 20 people queuing in front of them. Someone ask them to do something, so they also have to sometimes interrupt their flows, so everything needs to be quite clear when they come back. They also need to go back to what they left off with, and that can be quite challenging.
I have a question. Based from your experience, and again, also having this fresh perspective on healthcare, what are some of the trends you see in healthcare right now?
Good question. So yeah, I think probably, I'm not even sure if there are so many trends if you compare it to other fields, because especially in healthcare, or especially also healthcare in Germany, is a bit outdated in some ways. So you see people using fax to communicate.
Are they still sending pigeons?
Exactly, and you might see CDs that are burned, and patients are used to bring a CD from one specialist to the other. So all of these things are a bit outdated, I would say, but nevertheless, what you for sure see, as in any other field, is that AI is disrupting, and it's definitely something that we are exploring in some way. So we worked on this phone assistant, which I mentioned before, but we also, for example, work on a consultation assistant. And I think you could do a lot of cool things with this if you think about what your true intention is. And our true intention is that we actually don't want to add necessarily more technology which doctors should use. We would like to actually make them focus more time on their patients. And this consultation assistant could sit in the background. So maybe doctors just talk to their patients and go through the whole consultation process and just talk out loud and say what the diagnosis could be, and then this consultation assistant could potentially just suggest things which doctors then only have to confirm. So I think this is definitely something that we might see. So more AI integrated in software, but maybe not just taking over yet completely. And then I think one thing that wearables is for sure something that's interesting. I mean, I also usually wear an Apple Watch to track my steps, track my vitals, and I think if we would be able to take this in consideration for future ideas, I think it could be good. Also thinking about that, there is a trend which is that more and more doctors move to the cities. So actually, in rural areas, it's actually more difficult to find certain specialists. So in Berlin, it's difficult to find dermatologists, but where my mom lives, it's difficult to find almost anyone. She needs to go to Hanover in many cases to find a certain specialist. And I think this is where technology can for sure also help, especially if you work really remote, then live really remote, then I think certain trackers can help, and maybe also even possibilities to perform certain telemedicine acts from far. So not only using video, but I think this is something that dermatologists already use. You can easily use your camera to identify a certain skin disease, but you could even think about remote-controlled medical devices, maybe, which can be used by doctors from far. But I think this is more vision. I don't really see this in action so much. I think the next step is definitely that there will be more conversational interfaces and way more AI used in the daily work of practitioners.
Yeah, as you also mentioned, you see a lot of AI in your work, and obviously right now, I think every healthcare startup, if you don't have AI in your pitch, you probably won't get any investment. What would you suggest any startup right now in the healthcare space at the moment? What should they concentrate on? If you see maybe a particular niche, or maybe just you heard of some cool startups in the healthcare space and you just like what they do.
I'm not even sure if I would suggest anything else to a healthcare startup than what I would suggest to other startups, because I feel like when I see some posts on LinkedIn, I have the feeling that especially companies which release these vibe coding, vibe design tools, they make it seem like you don't really need to do research anymore. You don't need specialists. You only need someone who is able to use one of their tools, and then you're able to, I don't know, with a team of one, produce products, and everyone will buy them. And that's great. I don't really believe that, honestly. I think I see that AI speeds some things up. So, if you want to analyze data, for example, that's great for that. I think it's also great to explore ideas quickly. We also use, we use all of these tools. We test them all the time. So I'm not saying it's a bad idea to use them. So I definitely would do it. So we used V0, Lovable, Figma Make, all of these things. But I think right now it's more interesting to use them to play around and to test to see what comes out of it. And I think what people should not forget about, or what I would really suggest that they should do, and if they have an early startup, is to talk to their users as much as possible, because I feel like there are a lot of people now who post things on LinkedIn like, I made my first app in 1 week, but in this 1 week, it's cool. I would still say, this is a prototype. It's use it to test earlier, to build something quickly. I think it's awesome for that, but don't consider this being a final product. So we should just show it to people, get their reaction, see what's wrong, iterate really often. And so that's why I'm not sure if this is a different advice that I would give to someone in the healthcare industry necessarily. I think it's a good advice for any startup probably.
You mentioned AI a few times, and nowadays it's a truly a game changer. So it would be great to hear more about AI tools you use for your work.
Of course, yes. So maybe let me think about what I use, maybe in the order of how often I use it. I think what I use daily is Dust. Dust is a French company. It's an AI agent maker, I would say, as a core product, but you can also just use it to talk to all kinds of agents. So we have ChatGPT in there, we have Claude in there, all kinds of internal agents which we have built. And it's connected to our company documentation, which is quite cool. So I can just ask it for anything that I had trouble finding in the past. So everything that's added to Confluence, for example, or to Google Docs that we added to Dust is in there. And I can also use it to analyze some data. So I can just create a folder, add my documents in there. And I use this really for all kinds of things. So right now I was working on promotion cases. So I was adding all the feedback that I gathered from colleagues about a person in my team in there, and to try to analyze and create a profile of this candidate and see if they're already on the next level for what I would like to promote them. But we could also use it to analyze user research results. And I could even use it to create quick prototypes, because Claude is in there. So I could just, quickly, based on whatever I'm doing, create a prototype. And the cool thing is there's a Chrome extension, so I can actually just open it in a panel that sits in my browser. So I can keep on working on my whatever it is document, and I have this extension just next to it, can talk to it. Someone in our company even built a Dom Dressler, that's our VP of design agent. So you can talk to a virtual version of our design manager, and it's surprisingly good. So whenever I'm stuck, when I need to know about I don't know, some design rules, I always ask this agent, and it always helps me out. So that's pretty cool. And what we also use is Marvin. Marvin is a research tool. It's possible to connect recordings of videos and of also audio recordings into Dust, and you can use a few tags to, for example, tell Marvin what kind of person it was that you talked to, like a physiotherapist in Germany. And then you would define the size of the practice, for example. And afterwards, what you would be able to do is you can just analyze all the interviews, and you could also use it to ask questions about a very specific user group, which is cool. And I think this could be a trend in the future. I'm very curious to see in which direction that goes, because in theory you could create virtual user personas. So you could just say, I have this GP in Germany of this and this age who lives in large cities. And based on all the recordings which you did in interviews, it could create you a proto persona, and you could ask it questions, or just use it to analyze some assumptions that you might have. So that's pretty cool. And Gemini is something that we use because it's connected to all the Google tools. Let me think. I already mentioned the vibe design tools before. Figma Make has gotten a lot better recently, I think. So we're trying it every once in a while. I'm still curious about the true design system connection. It kind of works right now, but it's definitely got a step in the right direction. And maybe last thing could be Miro. In Miro, Miro, I'm never sure how you would pronounce it. I guess Miro, because it's named after the artist. There's an AI tool which you can also use to create flows. So first of all, flow diagrams, but even prototypes. And the cool thing about this, which I haven't seen in any of the other vibe design tools, is that it actually creates multiple frames of your prototype next to each other. So you create a visual overview, kind of like what you used to in Figma. The style is not sometimes like what you would like to release, but it gives you a good impression, and you can also directly change things in there, and then also press play to test the prototype. So very cool for workshop settings, for example, because our PMs don't have access to Figma, but they have access to Miro. And then in an ideation workshop, we could, for example, together with PMs or also engineers, build some prototypes.
And after such cool insights, it's really interesting to hear your perspective on what product designers should be learning now to stay relevant in the age of AI.
It would probably sound too obvious if I would say, do something with AI, but in a way, I feel like because it's such a big thing, I think that's what you should do. But at the same time, I also feel like people should not feel too stressed about being replaced too quickly, because I know everyone is a bit nervous about the future. We're not sure what's going to happen next year. It feels like things change really quickly. If I think about my own career, it changed drastically from when I started. So when I started, actually, I had to, we actually already worked on mobile devices, but it was before the iPhone came out. So we actually worked with these super old Nokia phones, for example, and they did not share any specs with us. So we had to sometimes use a magnifier glass to calculate the pixels, to understand on which canvas size we had to pixel icons. And then for 2 weeks, I listened to music and just pixeled icons, which was amazing. One of the best jobs I had. But if I compare it to now, everything has gotten a lot faster. And it's sometimes difficult to keep up with the speed of development. So that can feel stressful. But I would say try to, test new tools. I think it's actually quite exciting because I realized I always have gotten this, when I go back to what I said in the beginning, when I built my first website, that felt super exciting. When I first tried to play with After Effects and made a video, that was exciting. Now I feel exactly the same when I use vibe design tools to build an app. I actually tried Google AI Studio on the weekend. It's a free AI tool. It's super cool. You can actually use it from your mobile phone and just create an app really quickly. And I used it to build a dog cuteness analyzer and tested it with my dog, and it worked really well. So it all has some AI capabilities.
Is your dog cute?
Very cute.
So it ranked it as highly.
Exactly. I think it said something like, "Oh my God, I can't stand so much cuteness." That was the cuteness level. So what I would suggest is just be curious. Don't stress yourself too much. Test everything that comes out, but also don't be too stressed about not being able to test every single tool, because it's impossible. Just try something. Honestly, I think it's a phase when it feels like every 2 weeks there's something new software coming out, and just try something that you feel looks good, or if someone suggested it, test it for a while. At some point, probably only some of these tools might survive. Then we will know. But until then, yeah, just be curious and have fun.
From your perspective, how do you see the future of the product design role?
Ooh, interesting question. So I talked about this with a lot of my colleagues, because I also feel like it seems like the role might change. The product design role also was never like that in like, forever, because when I started my job, I actually was I would say a visual designer was the name back then for that what I did. But we also had information architects with UX designers, a lot of different design roles, and at some point they were all merged together into one role, this product designer. And I feel like sometimes we even expect quite a lot from junior designers. So as a junior designer, if you take on the role of a product designer, in theory, you need to know about UX design, you need to know about some products specifications, which go into the almost merge with what PMs are doing. You need to know about UI design and a lot of different things. And I also see that in designers these days, that they usually still have a focus, and they're almost or let's say there are not so many generalists, I think, and even generalists, usually they have something that they prefer doing a bit more, I think. And so that's why some people say that the role might even grow bigger and that designers might do even more different things in the future. And maybe it even merges with PMs at some point. Who knows? But then again, I feel like I'm not sure if humans are able to do so many things very well, or at least maybe they would be. But then it also has to do with what your passion is. Maybe you're not super passionate about all the steps in the product's development process. And I feel like my guess is actually more that maybe there's a split again, that some designers might go or move a bit closer to what PMs do, and maybe to focus a bit more on the discovery process. Maybe with a smaller team could be, but maybe not. So it could also be that right now I don't really see that we need less people. Honestly, I feel like we're faster, but we didn't have enough people before. That's why I feel like it's a good thing. And some designers might actually go more into the direction of front-end development. And maybe I also heard some stories about companies where designers actually build whole products using Cursor, for example. Interesting. So we tested it for us. So far, our product was a bit too complex for that, and it also has been built parts of it in older technology, parts in newer. So it's still a bit more complex to let designers handle this part of the process. But I do believe that we are able to build prototypes easier, which kind of look like the real thing. And this also, I see that helps our engineers also a lot. So the conversations are better. I think the hand-on process might be quite different in the future than it is today. So maybe you don't need to create so many specs anymore. You just show in a prototype how the product should look like. And super long rant about this. So honestly, I don't know, but my guess would be that that the product design role might actually split, and based on what your passion is, you might either go in this or that direction.
I want to take a step back. I was very curious because you mentioned that you went through a whole career, and you got obviously now to the level where you are now. I'm actually curious how you hire people. So what kind of questions do you ask people?
Ooh.
Do you have a favorite question? But like, when you talk to people, what is it that you're looking for when you're talking to, like product designers?
Definitely looking for people that I can connect with. I definitely look at people who are able to explain or start with the problem that they solve first. So you sometimes see it in some interviews that you see or also in portfolios that people only show the final product. And I even heard from some design managers who said that they focus more on that, and that they're not so interested in hearing the whole story about it. They only want to see a shiny, cool solution. But I'm actually a bit more interested in hearing why they did this in the first place, because I think this is something you see really often in practice, that people come up with a cool idea somehow, but then when you ask about why they did it, you realize it was more something that they always wanted to try, but it doesn't really solve any true user need. So that's something I'm looking for. But then I also look for package, I would say, so also someone who's able to transfer these ideas and these problems that they came up with in a nice crafted solution, uses maybe different strategies to get there. And what's actually also interesting now that I'm thinking about it is that I like it a lot if people tell me something they tried that didn't work. So usually, it happens really often that people said, yeah, I had this idea, we build it, directly increased the daily users by 50%. Everyone was happy, 5 stars in the App Store. But actually, you don't really hear so often if an idea failed. And that's really nice to hear, because then you realize, oh, they actually really worked on this and thought about it and overcame it possibly and came up with something else. And because I think that's super important that you test some things that also don't work and then just try something else. It's not all science.
Okay, David. So my next question is, what was the best advice that you got that impacted your profession?
I would say probably the best advice. I'm talking a lot about user research and talking to people today, I realized, but maybe that's something I'm most passionate about. Could be. So that's at least the first thing that comes to my mind right now. Again, because I think the best advice was that someone after an interview that I did just shadowed me, so an experienced user researcher, and afterwards told me, you should just shut up when talking to the people. It was quite drastic, but he was super right, because what he said was I kept on talking and trying to sell my idea, and when the people tested my prototype, I tried to directly jump in and say, yeah, but we didn't build this yet, and this will come, and actually what I thought about doing, blah 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 blah. And like this, I completely ruined the test, so to say, and I just brought the person into saying what I wanted to hear. And actually, the best thing you can do is say the least amount of words as possible. And what we sometimes now also do is just give people a prototype in the hand and don't say anything. And the best case, they ask them to speak out loud. And like this, you I think receive the best results.
Yeah, if let's say you could, and it's an open-ended question. So if you could redesign, one part of the healthcare like experience industry-wide, what would it be?
Yeah, great question. So maybe that's something that where I would pick something that we are busy with soon. So we're actually diving into a discovery about referrals. And a referral is basically when, let's say you go to your GP with an itchy arm, and maybe something is red on your arm, you don't know what it is. And after showing it to your GP, they have an assumption, but because they're not a dermatologist, they cannot say for sure. So what they would do is they would try to get you to a dermatologist to get some specialist knowledge about this, or some more information about this. So they write a referral letter, and in Germany, how this works is usually that they just write it on paper, give it to the patient. The patient can then decide to go to any dermatologist they want to pick. Probably use Doctolib to find one, book an appointment, and go there. And then your GP or the GP of this patient might not hear anymore about what happened afterwards. And this dermatologist might prescribe a medication, all based on a small part of the patient file, or like small amount of information that they got about this patient, which was on this referral letter, but they don't have any possibility to actually look into the patient file, because the patient file sits in the computer of the GP. And I think what could be super interesting is to achieve, to build the bridge in between these two people, first of all, and to see how we can create a continuous conversation in all directions. So not only between the two specialists, but also to the patient, because the patient might, depending on what health insurance they have, only receive a small part of the information. So in many cases, it means that patients actually, when they receive this referral letter, go to the specialist. The appointment, especially when it comes to dermatology, it might be a month later, maybe even half a year later, because it's very difficult to find them. And then they maybe don't even know anymore why they're there, or maybe in the best case, the thing on their arm is gone and everything is good, but it might come back in the future. And so patients are usually asked to also transfer medical information from one specialist to the other, and they, of course, in many cases don't have any medical background, so they might remember information incorrectly or leave out some information which could be important. And all of this, could be transferred in one way from one specialist to the other and back. So in the best case, I imagine that they share a patient file, kind of like an open Miro board or like a Figma page that multiple people can connect to. And in best case, also the patient. And maybe the patient is actually the person who has the possibility to grant certain people access to it. Because they have the full picture of their own health, and they could also decide. Let's say they do therapy, and they don't want a certain doctor who they're in contact with to know about this, and so they could also say, okay, I don't want them to see about my therapy sessions, but I want them to see that I had an accident last year and this happened, or also access to my medication, which I usually take because this is really important for other people to see. And so that's why I believe, this is a super interesting field. So fixing this referral process, I'm not sure, how quickly we're able to do this, but we're only diving into this right now. But all has to do with communication around these different partners, but also being able to share information from one person to the other.
And is this something that you're currently working on?
So it's something where we're diving into the discovery, yes. And so it's connected to this tool, which I mentioned in the beginning, Doctolib Connect, is a communication tool. But we would like to use it to not only communicate in between these two specialists, so they could already use it to, for example, search for any dermatologist in a certain city, for example. But we also would like to give them the possibility to share information in a secure way, and patients to be involved in the process, and by defining maybe what kind of information can be shared.
Just a follow-up question: Is it mostly in Germany, France, or Amsterdam? Because I'd imagine each one has different regulations, right? So they're what you can share, what you cannot share.
Yeah, so so this tool exists in all countries in theory, but what we do sometimes, so we usually don't try to focus on markets so much. In some cases we have to because of different regulations. But for example, when we brought out this patient messaging product, it was only for the Italian market first because it was a true need. Doctors used WhatsApp to communicate with their patients, which also meant that sometimes they were invited to family chats where they received GIF animations every morning, which was not the best experience for them. So we tried to solve this. And but then we realized actually this is a tool which is also needed in other markets. And for the referral, I think the problem exists everywhere. There might be slight differences in every country, but we would try to create a service that would work independently from the country, maybe also even independently from the countries where we're active today, because of course we would like to also grow and maybe go into other markets in the future.
That's awesome. No, I think that's definitely a problem that exists. I think kind of trying to solve the broken communication that is happening, especially when referencing like to a different specialist, and then you have to the patient has to repeat the same information again, and you're like, okay, and then maybe you might be referred one more time again, and you're like, okay, here we go again.
Exactly.
So yeah,
also from a perspective, of course, because they are used to having to fill out all of this information again and again and again.
Alex, David, thank you for such an amazing conversation.
Thanks so much to you guys. It was really fun talking to you.
It was a pleasure.
A small reminder for our listeners: all useful links from the episode you can find in the description. Thank you and have a great day.